What if I told you that the word justice, as we understand it, is, well, incomplete? Today, we're going to dive into the Arabic word adl. Now, it's almost always translated as justice, but that simple swap misses a whole universe of meaning. Let's get into what it really stands for.
So here's the plan. We'll start by tearing apart these two core concepts. Then we'll see how this idea of balance works on a huge cosmic scale, an individual one and a social one. We'll check out some real-world examples, and then we're going to compare two totally different legal philosophies. And to wrap it all up, we've got a great little case study that puts everything to the test.
Okay, first things first. For this to make any sense, we have to treat justice and adl as two completely separate ideas. Yeah, they might look similar on the surface, but trust me, they come from fundamentally different ways of seeing the world.
And here is the absolute key difference. In the West, we tend to think of justice as an action, right? It's a judge's verdict, it's a new law being passed, it's something we do. But adl is different. It's more like a state of being, a perfect equilibrium that our job is to maintain.
The word adl literally means something like to straighten or to make level. I want you to picture a perfectly balanced old-school scale. When both sides are perfectly level, that state of perfect harmony is adl. So it's not just about one transaction being fair, it's about the entire system humming along in a state of balance. And get this, the opposite of adl isn't just unfairness. It's a very specific concept called zulm, which means to displace something, to create an imbalance. So when you commit an injustice, from this point of view, you're literally knocking that perfectly balanced scale out of whack. You're putting something where it just doesn't belong, and you're messing up the whole natural order of things. Now, this whole idea of balance, it isn't just about courtrooms and legal codes. It actually operates on three totally distinct levels, from the mind-boggling scale of the universe right down to our own inner lives.
So first, you've got divine justice. This is the idea that the entire universe, we're talking everything from the orbits of planets to the cells in your body, is one giant, perfectly balanced system. Then you zoom in to individual justice. This is all about our own internal moral balance, keeping our desires and our intellect in check. And then finally, we get to the level we're all most familiar with, social and legal justice. And that's about making sure everyone in a community gets what they are due, keeping the whole society in balance. All right, so how does this huge cosmic philosophy actually play out in the real world? Let's look at a few examples to make this a bit more concrete.
This is where things get really interesting because from an adl perspective, equality is not always justice. Think about it like this. Giving a size 40 shoe to an adult and a size 25 to a little kid, that's adl, that's just. Why? Because each person gets what actually fits them. Now, if you gave them both a size 32.5 shoe, that would be equal, sure, but it would also be zulm, an injustice, because now the shoes are completely useless to both of them. And you see this principle of balance over sameness pop up everywhere. In Islamic economics, for instance, charging interest is traditionally a no-go because it creates this huge imbalance of risk. In society, you have mandatory charity, or zakat, which is seen as a tool to literally rebalance the wealth in the community. And in family law, the whole focus is on complementary rights and duties, not identical ones, to create a balanced, harmonious family unit. All these specific examples, though, they're really pointing to a much, much bigger split, a fundamental divide between two entire legal traditions. This is so important to understand. Historically, Sharia was not some single state-enforced book of laws. The word itself means the path to the water source. It was always understood as more of an ethical framework, a path you follow to find justice, with a bunch of different legal schools all offering their own interpretations of that path. And this all leads us right to the heart of the philosophical conflict. Is law something that we humans just create? Or is it something we're meant to discover from some pre-existing divine or natural order? See, in the Western legal tradition, a really dominant idea eventually won out, that law is essentially man-made. Thinkers argued it was just the will of the state, a system of rules that was totally separate from morality, just a social contract. But the Sharia framework sees it completely differently. In that view, the ruler is under the law, not the source of it. Morality and law are tangled up together. You can't separate them. And the law itself is seen as this transcendent obligation. Okay, I know this is all getting a bit abstract, so let's put these two philosophies to the test with a real-world dilemma that really makes you think. So imagine this. Somebody loans you $1,000, let's say. It's enough to buy a used car. A year goes by, you have to pay it back, but in that time, massive hyperinflation has hit. that same $1,000 is now worth less than a loaf of bread. The question is, what's the fair amount to pay back?
Well, from a modern legal positivist perspective, like that of Hans Kelsen, the answer is brutally simple. The law is the law. The contract said 1,000 units, so you pay back 1,000 units. End of story. Whether that's fair or not is a moral question, not a legal one. The system cares about formal correctness and certainty above all else.
But if you're coming at this from the perspective of Adl, the goal is completely different. The goal is to restore the original balance. Paying back a now worthless sum would be a huge injustice. It would be zulm. So a judge's job would be to find a way to restore the original value of the loan, maybe by tying the repayment to the price of gold or some other stable commodity. So look at what just happened here. This case perfectly shows the divide. One system says, I'm going to prioritize formal certainty even if the result feels totally unfair. The other system says, my job is to achieve real material fairness and restore the balance. It's the difference between just applying a rule and actively maintaining an equilibrium.
And that brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? That core distinction between justice as this one-time action we take versus adl as this continuous state of balance that we are responsible for maintaining. It's a subtle difference, but it changes everything about how you think about fairness.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Is it really as simple as saying one of these systems is law and the other is just religion? Or are we actually looking at two distinct, sophisticated, and fully developed legal philosophies, each with its own internal logic, its own goals, and its own unique path to figuring out what it means to be just?